where the Interior Minister has quoted as saying 24 towns and villages have now been flooded after a major dam was destroyed in the south of the country. The Kremlin spokesperson has denied that Russia was responsible. Well, this video that was tweeted by Ukraine's President Zelensky shows the breached Kakhovka hydroelectric dam. Mr. Zelensky says that this confirms for the whole world that the Russians must be expelled from every corner of Ukrainian land. But the two sides have blamed each other for its destruction. Kyiv has accused Russia of blowing up the dam to slow Ukraine's offensive by making it hard to cross the Dnipro River. Russia says that Ukraine is to blame. But regardless of who or what caused the explosion, it has potentially deadly consequences for the towns and villages in the path of the water. BBC Verify is now working to establish the timeline of events, and there was already some damage to the dam before today's developments. We can see in these satellite images that were shared by the space technology company Maxar, a road that was visible in late May is no longer there, and these are images taken on Sunday. The substantial breach is also visible. New images from today show just portions of the destroyed dam.
Because Ukraine would blow up their own dam, Lamau. So it's actually, listen to what they're saying. The Ukrainians, he said, even conducted a test strike with HIMARS launcher on one of the floodgates of the Kakhovka Dam, making 3 holes in the metal. Anyway, let's look at what the Western media is saying first, okay, and then we'll continue talking about this.
Dam protruding from the current one, with the full scale of the disaster only beginning to unfold now. Well, these images are from areas downstream. They show the scale of the flooding. The Russian-installed mayor of the town immediately next to the dam says the water level there has already risen to...
Shadow-Reno's done. I don't know what happened.
Well, let's speak now to our diplomatic correspondent, Paul Adams, who's live in Kyiv. And Paul, we'll come on to the implications of this in just a second. But what do we know about what was behind the collapse of this crucial dam?
Well, as you say, there was signs of a breach in the dam over the weekend, but something happened overnight to result in a fairly catastrophic breach, which is now
it's back,
perhaps as wide as 100 or 200 meters across. So whether that was the result of earlier damage and that resulted in a structural collapse, or...
Look. First statement from the BBC. First line of speculation from the BBC is not to immediately say this is absolutely fucking Russia's doing, okay? But instead to speculate that this could have happened due to regular wear and tear. Brother, when they blew up the fucking the Nord Stream pipeline, okay? When they blew that up, even then they immediately were like, oh, it's 100% fucking Russia that did it to themselves. And then we found out that that was not the case, which was like the most obvious fucking lie that everyone collectively was saying. I find that to be interesting. I think that's huge. Then explain why a chunk of a road was demolished day prior. Dude, I'm not even in the business here of saying that this is Ukraine that did it to themselves. I'm simply, because I do think that it very likely could have been Russia. Much more likely than the Nord Stream situation, right? Like, much more likely. It's still very weird that, like, the BBC is first speculation is not to immediately say it's Russia, okay? But instead to say maybe it was structural damage. They had both said the other person was going to do that 8 months ago. So remember that. That's interesting. This is huge. These guys, a lot of these guys basically get their fucking talking points from the State Department, or they're operated by, similar material interests in this. I don't think it was regular wear and tear. We all know that already. But it's weird that they would even suggest that instead of saying, oh, it's definitely Russia. It's definitely Russia. Especially because this seems like a significantly more believable Russian demolition plan than the fucking Nord Stream situation, where they very quickly jumped and said Russia. Why? I find that to be very strange.
Or the result of a deliberate attempt to blow it up once and for all. We just don't know at the moment. I think I would point out that, as you mentioned in the introduction, if you look at who had a motivation to bring this dam down, don't forget that there was a road across that dam until yesterday, and at a time when the Ukrainian army is on the offensive, it's really only logical that the Russians would have a reason for that dam and for that road to be removed. Because if you look at a map from south of the city of Zaporizhia, that dam represented the only viable crossing from one side of the Dnipro River to the other. So as the Russians contemplate a series of Ukrainian advances along a very broad front, it was logical that they would be worried about that dam.
Yes, and Paul, there are two serious implications of this collapse of the dam. One upstream, of course, for the Zaporizhia nuclear plant. We're told that water levels there are falling and that water is needed to cool the plant. The UN, though, says for now that's safe.
There's a cooling nuclear station. Crimea was 8 years without water and again lost it. Minefield on the RF side are all gone. All defense positions and ammo gone. Water mirror near nuclear station will be gone, and you don't need to have to swim for a mile. I don't know this last part, but the minefield on the Russian side that they've laid down as a defensive for the counteroffensive attacks that Ukraine was slated to. It has been basically like slow revealing, like a boyfriend reveal on the fucking timeline. That's like supposed to happen. It's supposed to happen anytime. Like, it's supposed to literally start happening, dude. They've been soft launching it for a minute now. I don't know when it's actually going to officially happen. But this explosion or this collapse, sorry, remember, they're calling it a collapse. They're not even calling it like a controlled demolition or an explosion, which again, very weird, okay? Very fucking weird. Just remember that. Why is the Western media calling this a collapse and not immediately saying that, like, Russians did it? Werger says, why would Russia do this and cut off Crimean water? Argument is stupid because it completely ignores A, Ukrainian territories in Kherson where a bunch of people live will be flooded, and B, it will slow down or completely make the counteroffensive in Kherson impossible, not to mention this dam was literally on the front line and Ukraine was likely going to regain it sometime in the future. Yeah, this also most likely destroys the viable land for agriculture. I don't know how that fucking land, I don't know how much agricultural output comes from the immediate region there, but like this destroys it for many, many years. So I don't know how the fuck, I don't know how you would like say that this is beneficial for Ukraine in general. The entire river started flowing backwards 2 hours after the collapse. Unfathomable damage. Yo, big guy, what's your take on Twitch changes? Will you change platforms if they really go through with banning political content? Twitch is banning political content. I doubt it. But I'm talking about something different right now. Only paid political content? Oh, that's why someone was saying, do you have any political sponsorships earlier? Brother, none of the quote-unquote ads, okay? None of the sponsorship shit actually hits me in any significant way. I still have an issue with Twitch basically removing one other like form of monetization from the content creators on this fucking platform, which is ridiculous because not everyone is going to run top of the hour ad breaks at the top of every hour for 3 minutes, okay? And then tell people that if they no longer want to see those ads, all they need to do is subscribe, which they can do for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime by connecting their Amazon Prime account to their Twitch accounts, okay? Where they get one free Prime subscription a month. But like, it's fucking insane that like they're doing that and basically forcing everyone to like operate kind of like me. Not the political ad stuff, the other ad stuff. Okay? Yeah, don't even fucking front. That was sheesh. That was one of those. Okay. The Raging Hopper, thank you for the 10 gift of subs, allowing 10 people to no longer see the ads at the top of the hour. Lord of Peacocks, thank you for the 5. Here's a 3-minute ad break now. Would that stop you from working with someone like the DSA? What? No. What are you talking about? I don't have any ads. Like, the DSA doesn't give me money. I give them money. Okay? What are you saying? You think the DSA is going to give me money? What are you, fucking crazy? They don't have money. What are you talking about? Every single political movement and organization that I have worked with, I've done on my own. And not only that, but to like give more icing on the top, I give them money. Okay? That's not how this works. When you actually care about politics, when you actually have a political opinion, especially one that is outside of like the norm in the American two-party system, okay, you don't end up working for money with these fucking, with these organizations, because a lot of them are fucking broke and they rely on grassroots donations. I give them money, not the other way around. Would it stop the dono banners that you run for the fundraising you do? Yeah, good luck with that. Anyway. Under the Twitch guidelines, Hasan's Among Us stream with AOC would be prohibited. Political content including... No. These are ads, man. You guys are wrong. No. It's a fucking charity event for like a get out to vote initiative. No, none of this touches me, okay? Stop. There's no sponsorship involved in this. Like, do you think AOC paid me? HasanAbi Production is spreading fake info for engagement. How surprising. Yeah, literally. HasanAbi Production is like, please stop working against me for once. Jesus Christ. None of the new changes... Hasan, man, we're just worried for you. No, none of the new changes impacts me. None of them. If anything, it's like better for, on the political side, it's better that there are no like political ads on the fucking platform. Okay? None of it touches me. None of it impacts me in any capacity whatsoever. However, these changes are fucking gross regardless. Okay? They're gross. Let's finish the fucking Russia-Ukraine story. God damn it. I can tell none of you guys care about this shit. Oh my God. Okay? Holy shit. Everyone's literally like, dude, what the fuck? Wait, dude, fuck this Russia shit, okay? Fuck this Ukraine shit. We don't give a fuck. We want to talk about Twitch.
But downstream, 24 towns and villages now in the path of floodwater.
Yes, it's going to be a while, I think, before we get a sense of exactly how many people have been affected by this. Don't forget that until fairly recently, this was the front line, and there was a lot of shelling and sniping across the river in both directions. And so it is possible that some of those communities that we have seen inundated in images today may have been somewhat partially or perhaps even completely evacuated. We just don't know. Further downstream, around 80 kilometers or so, you have the big city.
That's actually a good point. I forgot to mention this as well. We can try to see who had pre-evacuation to know who planned this. But I think it flooded like Russian-controlled territory, and I'm but I don't know. I don't know if both sides actually ended up evacuating.
Hasan, which of course fell to Ukrainian forces back in November. There is sign of flooding too. It's not nearly as acute as it is closer to the dam, but the authorities have not taken any chances, and they are evacuating people, particularly elderly residents, from some of the lower lying parts of that city. So I think it'll be a little while before we understand the exact consequences of what the Ukrainian government is calling ecocide, because all along that river, and particularly on the south side, there are highly sensitive ecological areas. There's a biosphere down on the south bank opposite Hasan, which could have been severely damaged by this flooding. So we'll need to watch that and see what happens. As you say, on the other side of the dam at Zaporizhia, that is obviously a source of concern. It has been a source of concern for the UN's nuclear watchdog.
It flooded the right side of the Dnieper River, which is under Ukrainian control and is lower on the sea level than the left side, which is Russian controlled. I like that there are people in the chat saying literally the exact opposite things of one another. Let me just listen to this fucking guy. He will explain it.
The IAEA for a year or more now. At the moment, the cooling facilities, the pond that cools the spent rods, that keeps the whole nuclear power system cool, that is intact. There's no immediate danger. But the level of the reservoir is falling, the last I heard, by around 5 centimeters an hour, and that could, over time, result in another problem.
Paul, it's good to have you with us. Thank you. Paul Adams live in Kyiv. So Paul touched on what could happen next. Well, the Ukrainian foreign minister, that's Dmytro Kuleba, says that the international community needs to hold Russia to account.
President Zelensky immediately convened the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine. Ukrainian law enforcement and emergency services are working hard to mitigate the consequences and save lives. Ukraine calls an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council and brings the issue of the Russian Terrorist Act to the International Atomic Energy Agency's Board of Governors. We will also cooperate with the EU Civil Protection Mechanism and other international mechanisms to mitigate consequences and bring Russia to account. In light of developments on the battlefield, Russia's deliberate and long-planned terrorist act turned the man-made flood into a weapon.
Well, we've heard also from the former Prime Minister of Ukraine, that's Hasan Yatsenyuk. He's been giving his reaction to what is now unfolding around the dam on the Dnieper River.
You know, this is another part of the Russian military tactics and strategy against Ukraine. This comprises everything, including humanitarian disasters and catastrophe and the man-made disasters that Russia inflicted on Ukraine. You know, it resembles me the letter of Nazi leader Himmler that he sent in 1943 to then governor, so-called governor of Ukraine, when they were retreating from the Ukrainian territory. In his letter, he said that, look, we need to leave a scorched earth in Ukraine, kill everything, including even animals. So Putin and his policy is a copycat scenario of Nazi policy. And this constitutes definitely an international and war crime. And
they're still just calling each other Nazis, huh? Yeah. And the irony, of course, is that there are literally actual fascists on both sides of the battle. Like literally, you got a bunch of fucking Russian Nazis doing Nazi shit, and then you got a bunch of Ukrainian Nazis also doing the same. So that's why it's like, you know, you say that, but okay, like.
This is in complete violation.
They're having a Naz off.
With the Article 56 of Geneva Convention. But Putin doesn't care about the international law. What he cares about his imperialistic...
Ultimately, though, yes, you are correct. One side is invading and the other side is defending themselves from invasion. So, you know, let's make that clear, okay? You know, the personal ideologies of the people, that are on the defensive side is an entirely different subject for an entirely different time, which will lead to plenty of complications. It already has, but it will lead to plenty of fucking complications down the line for Ukraine in general. But we haven't even gotten to that point yet, because a lot of those guys on the defensive side are too busy trying to not fucking die and, you know, defend themselves. When they have no such interest, or when that defensive position goes away and they're no longer needed to defend the country, well, then it'll be an issue. But we're not there yet.
Stupid thinking and ideas how to take over Ukraine and how to restore the Soviet Union. So this is a huge disaster and another challenge for Ukraine and another threat for the entire world.
So that's the former Prime Minister of Ukraine. Let's take you live to the region. We can speak to Alexei Goncharenko, who's an MP for the...
Yeah, people are trying to paint Ukrainians as Nazis when Ukrainians suffered the brunt of the Holocaust. Like half of all Jews were killed in Ukraine. It's even crazier to be a Ukrainian Nazi. Yeah, it is. And yet, you know, the New York Times had to issue a fucking statement about it because they saw that it was, you know, not great from an optics perspective. So, you know, there was another side to the Ukrainian World War II struggle because, you know, that there was one side of it that was the Ukrainian Jews that were, you know, being killed. And then the other side was collaborators with the Nazis that thought that joining forces with the Germans would allow them to escape the wrath of the USSR and could basically build their nation state. It's history. It's, you know, not entirely relevant to this point. Not entirely relevant to this dam blowing up, or sorry, this dam crumbling. Who knows how? Who knows what? Which, by the way, it's just like there are plenty of fucking weirdly like hyper-nationalist Nazi movements in Eastern Europe. Ironic because like Hitler did not consider them to be a part of the in-group. Like they were, I mean, he very openly was showing his disdain, killed a lot, and also literally said, "You're not part of the team. What is my man doing? You're not part of the team." So very odd for you know, Eastern Europeans to like only a couple decades later to just be like, no, this is actually fire. But I was once recruited by Nazi footballers when I was a teen in Ukraine. It says Hegel but poggers. Yeah. It's like, what is my man doing at that point? You know what I mean? Like, you're a Nazi football hooligan? Like, how did that happen? Like, but then again, I mean, we've talked about this before. There's like a fucking Nazi movement in Latin America too. Anyway.
Odessa region in Ukraine. Alexei, thank you for being with us. You, I understand, are right by the river, and I'm seeing behind you, and those waters look very high. Just tell us what you can see right now.
Yeah, hello. I'm standing I'm in the city of Kherson, in the center of the city. On the other side, you can see this is the park of glory, and this is the monument for victory over Nazism. And as you see, again, this land is suffering from Nazis, this time Russian Nazis, which committed an awful crime. This is the level of water. Even in this morning, here were several meters, we already have several meters here of water raised. Before, here was a passage, you see the trees, you see the level of the trees, and here are the steps which were coming to the Dnieper River. But we see by our own eyes how the water is, the level of the water is increasing. Also, you can see how quickly the water is moving, and that is really very, very quickly. So that's what's going on right now here in Kherson after this Russian awful war crime.
And Alexei, for those that aren't familiar with the geography, maybe just explain, if you can, where you are in relation to that hydroelectric dam. How far away are you, and maybe how long it has taken for that water level to rise where you
are? By direct, I think it's near 100 kilometers. So it's already, water is already here. So it's up to the north, and this direction is the dam of Kakhovka hydroelectric station. This direction is the Black Sea, and here is the river, and the level is coming up because all this huge amount of water which was stopped by the dam now is moving to the sea. By the way, I smell there is a smell of an oil machine oil, engine oil, because more than 150 tons of engine oil at least now is in the water, engine oil from the dam, and maybe more will come, because there is more, 300 tons more. So this is a huge ecological catastrophe. With that, the consequences will last for decades after what had happened.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That is, again, according to Geneva Convention, such attacks on hydroelectric stations, it equals the using of mass destruction weaponry, nuclear weaponry, chemical weaponry, because the consequences are so awful, and that lives of tens of thousands of people on both sides of the river. Now I'm standing on the right side of the river, which is controlled by Ukraine. At this direction, maybe you hear there were already several explosions during our conversation. This side of the river, left bank of the river, is controlled by Russian army, but people on the both banks now are endangered. Their lives are endangered. We're speaking about thousands and thousands of people.
Yeah.
Already Ukraine is evacuating people from Kherson.
And Alexei, there is a suggestion that this dam was taken out because it had a road that crossed across the top of the dam, and it would allow movements of troops or weaponry across that dam. Talk to me about the logistics of where you are. How many crossing places are there on the river? Because we are told that this was a pretty key crossing point.
Now there is no crossing points. The closest is...
Do you think that maybe the media's reluctance to ascribe responsibility comes from overcompensating for how wrong they were with Nord Stream? Fuck no. Are you kidding me? This is war. The entire purpose of the media is to portray it as whatever they think is the most effective propaganda for Ukraine. For Western media, and the same goes for Russian media. Russian media's entire purpose, doesn't matter if they get it wrong, they have no obligation to get it right. What they have an obligation for is whoever is on their side, to make them look good. Okay, that's the only obligation they have. So the only reason, that's why I'm saying, like, it's really important the way that they're portraying the situation, and not immediately rushing to the conclusion and like directly pointing the blame on Russia. I find that to be very, very interesting. And the only reason why I think, despite the fact that I do think that Russia, it seems, has more to gain from blowing this up, it seems like it, okay, immediately. And I did not, if you recall, ever say that about the Nord Stream pipeline explosions, where, it was like very obvious. Like it felt insane to me that people were like, oh, this is definitely Russia. And I was like, no, the fuck it's not. You're out of your mind. In this circumstance, the fact that they are not immediately rushing to that conclusion is definitely curious. And it's certainly not because they're like worried that they're going to come across partial. Of course they're partial. That's their job. Their job is to not make it look. Well, their job is not to make it. Their job is not to offer objective coverage on the situation. Okay. What are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything, because like I said, I do think that it seems more like it was an operation conducted by the Russians. But I do find it odd that they wouldn't say that they didn't immediately rush to that conclusion. Okay? Media approaches this with skepticism, since both sides heavily utilize disinformation strategies in their military planning as a vestige of Soviet tactics. I mean, here is the reason why I think it's interesting, because it's not zero sum. Like, blowing up this dam is not literally only good for Russia and only bad for Ukraine. It seems like either because it's copium or because they want to make the best out of a horrifying situation. Both sides have basically said, like, oh, this is not the worst for us. It's actually the other side that like did it. But even then, it kind of, they owned themselves. You know what I mean? Like, Russia's position is that Ukraine did this to themselves, and it's actually a major own for themselves. Look at these fucking idiots, right? Whereas the Ukrainian position seemingly is the same, where they're saying Russia did this, but like it actually flooded their fucking defensive positions right before we were supposed to do a counteroffensive. You guys fucking suck. You're so stupid. And normally the media would rush to take up the position that like Russia is single-handedly and completely responsible for this. But this is the first time I've seen a situation where they're like, this is the first time I've seen a situation where they aren't saying that. And the only time you hear that is usually after the fact, a couple months after the media has like engaged in some level of misinformation, like the Nord Stream pipeline explosions, to basically say, oh, well, you know, maybe it was actually, you know, people with loyalties to Ukraine that did it. Who knows? You know what I mean? Which is like, you know, that never comes in the beginning of the speculative process. The beginning of the speculative process is usually just like single-handedly blaming Russia. So I do think that it's interesting that they aren't rushing to that conclusion.
Close to here, just several kilometers, but it was blown up. Russians destroyed it when they were retreating from Kherson in the end of last year. So there is no one crossing point here and up to dam. And the dam was the only crossing point which Russians destroyed. But even, I mean...
HasanAbi, listening to this bullshit reasoning as a Ukrainian who experienced the shit right now horrible is the Russian side. And our government immediately told the Russians blew up the dam. Thousands of live zoos are just underwater. Thousands of animals dead. I don't disagree with you. I'm talking about the BBC's analysis. Western media usually does not shy away from just saying that it's fucking Russia.
They are so barbaric. They just, if they try by this to stop Ukrainian...
Look at this. Look. You don't think this is unique? You don't think this is unique in the grand scheme of things? It does not matter what your perspective on this war is, right? And you know what my perspective on this war is. I mean, I think that it is unjustifiable, incredibly cruel. It's fucked up. Russia is responsible for it, for the invasion. They should not have done that, clearly, okay? But the fact that the Biden administration cannot say conclusively who was responsible for the massive breach of the Kakhovka Dam in southern Ukraine is interesting. It's different than what they have done before. Same happened when the Ukrainian air defense missiles killed the Polish civilians. Yeah. It's strange. And I don't know if it's because they want to like cool the temperature because like this is a massive fucking war crime either way. Or because they, or I don't know, or because like it might have been a Ukrainian strategic assessment. On the one hand, they're saying this. On the other, they're also directly pointing, like the Reuters news report that we looked at, U.S. intelligence points to Russia being behind the Ukrainian dam attack. How can you say that when this statement is a few hours after the bombing? Like, they're likely doing investigations too? What do you mean? You are basing all of this off of one dude's report? No, I'm not. I'm basing this off of, look, I don't know what the fuck happened. I think it's most likely Russia. But having said that, I only know one thing, and that's media analysis, okay? And I'm looking at fucking what the media is saying, and it is very different, and what the State Department is saying, and that's very different than what they normally say in a situation like this. It could also potentially be that they wanted to, I don't know, they wanted to like cause minor flooding, and then the infrastructure didn't hold up, and it became like a major issue. But I don't know. I don't know how fucking dam demolition would work. Would you have the balls to come out and say that Russia is objectively not poggers? I mean, I've said it so many times. I've said worse things. I've said Russia is objectively weird, champ. Right. Collapse of major dam in southern Ukraine triggers emergency as Moscow and Kyiv trade blame. Yeah, again, this article is also playing the both sides narrative, at least like the headline is. Normally, headlines like this would immediately fucking shift the responsibility directly in the hands of Russia. Why are they fucking saying how there's a responsibility trading happening right now? Ukraine accused Russian forces of blowing up the Kakhovka Dam and hydroelectric power station, which sits on the Dnieper River in an area that Moscow has controlled for more than a year. Russian officials blame Ukrainian bombardment in the contested area. It was not possible to reconcile the conflicting claims. Russian and Ukrainian officials use terms like ecological disaster and terrorist act to describe the torrent of water gushing through the broken dam and beginning to empty an upstream reservoir that is one of the world's largest. Ukrainian President Zelensky called it the largest man-made environmental disaster in Europe in decades. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, ahead of an emergency security council meeting, called it another devastating consequence of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The environmental and humanitarian consequences quickly became clear as homes, streets, and businesses flooded downstream and emergency crews began evacuations. Officials monitored water for cooling systems at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, and authorities expressed concern about drinking water supplies in both Ukrainian and Russian-controlled areas. Especially because, like, it does actually impact both sides of the fucking war. There's no way it's an accident. I don't think it's an accident, but it is weird. It's such a fucking weird situation. I don't know what the. Don't say fucking five head when I say both sides. It literally does impact both sides. I don't know why they are not immediately blaming Russia. I don't know why they're not immediately blaming Russia. It's weird. A woman who gave her name only as Tetiana waded through the thigh-deep water to reach her flooded house and rescue her dogs. They were standing on any dry surface they could find, but one pregnant dog was missing. It was a nightmare, she kept repeating, declining to give her full name. So here's the burst dam. Ukrainian and Russian forces blamed each other for bombing a major dam and hydroelectric power station. Here's the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which relies on this river water for cooling. Here's the Kakhovka Dam hydroelectric plant that was damaged in the strike. These are the areas that Russia is advancing in, and these are the areas that Russia controls. Here are some of the areas where the Ukrainian counteroffensive is happening. Why can't I just like open up this goddamn image in another tab? Both the Russian and Ukrainian authorities brought in trains and buses to move residents to safety. About 25,000 people in Russian-controlled areas, about 17,000 people in Ukrainian-held territory should be evacuated. Ukraine's deputy chief prosecutor, Victoria Litvinova, said on Ukrainian television. Neither side reported deaths or injuries.